I want to begin, though, by thanking our supporters, which enable us to do programs such as this: the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts Foundation, the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts Board of Trustees, the City of Little Rock, the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau, the City of North Little Rock, the Arkansas Arts Council, a division of the Department of Arkansas Heritage, and the National Endowment of the Arts. Also, a special thank you to our members for supporting us during this time of reimagining the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts Museum. This is really a transformational time in our history. We are undergoing a major expansion and renovation of our historic facility and creating a new one in MacArthur Park, which is scheduled to be completed later this year and then opening to the public in 2022. So it is a project that has grown and is now a capital campaign with a goal of $142 million, of which 136 has been raised to date. So a really successful public and private partnership of which we are very supportive of our sponsors and supporters. This work that we're going to discuss tonight is part of our efforts to also remain visible while we are closed or undergoing this transformation. And this work is currently on view at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art up in Bentonville, Arkansas, and is one of 4 from the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts Foundation's collection as part of the exhibition Crafting America, which is on view through May 31st of 2021, after which it travels to 2 other venues before your work returns to the museum and then can be installed in our galleries when we reopen in 2022. So we're very appreciative that we're able to continue to share this work while we are undergoing our major project. And in fact, works from the collection are viewable across the country. We have 2 works currently on view at the Cleveland Museum of Art. We have 15 significant sculptures at the Bradbury Art Museum in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And then a number of works from our craft collection are also on view locally in each of the Central Arkansas Library System branches. So again, it's a way for us to remain visible while we're undergoing this transformation. I want to acknowledge Elena Del Rio and her support of this project and her representation of you throughout the year. She has been a long time supporter of the museums and the growth of our collection and also our exhibitions. So I do want to thank Elena for her support. And without further ado, I just want to introduce you two, and people aren't necessarily here to hear me, but learn about your work. Einar and Jamex, you were born in Guadalajara in 1963 and 1960 respectively. And then you moved to the United States in 1972, where you went from a traditional Catholic school to a small Southern California beach town. You went to California State University at Long Beach, where Jamex, you got a degree in sculpture, and Einar, according to your own website, you decided against the utility of an art degree. So you live and work on both sides of the border now, splitting time between the Guadalupe Valley in Baja California, and in Mexico and in San Diego, California. And your artwork shows the complexities of your immigrant experience and the contradicting bicultural identities, as well as your current life and practice on both sides of the border. You've been collaborating since the 1990s. And in that time, you've developed a signature style featuring mixed media artwork incorporating blown glass sculpture, as well as installation art. Your work represents a multifaceted view of life and reflects a complex and humorous aesthetic, which our visitors will be able to see tonight, that can be seen as multi-layered Baroque. I like to call it a visual cacophony. Your approach is very additive, and it's constantly combining material and meaning and influences ranging from religious iconography to German Expressionism, while also paying homage to Mexican vernacular arts and pre-Columbian art. So again, thank you for joining us. And I know you'll touch on this later, but this program is the inaugural program after we rebranded as the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. So if you take that into account with your also being the inaugural exhibition at the Cheech Marin Center for Chicano Art, Culture, and Industry at the Riverside Art Museum, you've got some pretty impressive bona fides there.
Well, thank you, Brian, for that wonderful introduction and for having us. And congratulations to you and indeed all of Little Rock for the expansion and rebranding. We think it looks like it's going to be a fabulous building and well-deserved. And we're very, very happy and proud to be part of the collection.
Thank you.
I will start. So I'm Einar. Jamex, brother.
I'm Jamex. Thank you for having us. It's our pleasure to do this. I think it's important to stay connected in this time that we all feel isolated. So it's a good thing. We believe it's a good thing.
I'm going to share screens now and start a presentation.
Thank you. And it is amazing to think that you are doing this from San Diego. Earlier, Einar, you were in Mexico, so that we can have these virtual opportunities and really speak to a global audience. So thank you.
So right now you can see our screen is with a trifecta, right?
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Good. Excellent. So the reason we're calling this trifecta is that we see our career kind of in a three-pronged. We used to call it sort of a pitchfork. One being gallery work that you can carry and put in the gallery, walls or pedestal work, sometimes very object-oriented. The other one is installations, which we will show, which is more like an immersive situation where you're actually, instead of looking at a piece of work, you're actually more or less walking into the environment, site-specific installations sometimes. And then lastly, it is the public art, which is another big part of our career. So here we are outside of our, we're represented as the sort of Buddhists, little Buddha babies, outside of our studio in Baja. And so this is outside, and from the inside, looking out, that's our wonderful oak tree that we sort of framed with our relatively new studio we have recently built. And there is work in progress for a show we did precisely with the Copeland Del Rio Gallery that we were making in fall of last year, on the table on the right there. And the panel is for a public art piece that we will also show.
Two of our older pieces from the 1990s in a period we like to call rascuache, which means making do with what you have and not caring that much about the finities of life. The one on the left is Baja Cali with a blown glass piece and a lampwork figures. And the one on the right is a barbecue with a figure coming out of it because it's called Cuauhtémoc. In the history of the last emperor of the Aztecs, Cortés had his feet burned in order for him to find out where the treasure was, more gold.
Not enough gold. And to give you a scale, that is a real backyard barbecue, and that's a Honda motorcycle gas tank in his sort of a vest, Evel Knievel style, for those of you who remember Evel Knievel. Brian asked us to include some drawings so you can see the drawing on the right, and that's a piece that we fabricated in glass. The piece on the left, that's a piece called Bible Belt that we made in Star, North Carolina, and very conscious of that, of that we were in the South and that kind of Baptist churches everywhere. And so that is a blown glass sculpture of the figure. And again, the drawings on the right before we made it, and below is a cast resin base, which we use quite a bit in our work.
So overall, it's about 3 feet high.
3 feet high?
A little,
okay.
Yeah, maybe a little under.
Yeah, not quite, but yeah, maybe 28 inches. Anyway, so here's where we're doing it. There's a drawing of a flyboy, and then the piece on the left. It's a piece that we've made different versions of. It's sort of the flyboy, both probably started from when we saw the movie The Fly as a kids, you know, the original version, of course, from the 1950s. And it's always stuck with us. And later on, of course, with Jeff Goldblum, there was a remake. And so we use some found objects. We don't love the term because we really go out of our way. Well, we like to call them well-chosen objects. The background of the piece there, of the Lord of the Flies, this piece is called on the left, is a probably store display of some sort that we adapted and use in our work. It's got disco lights flashing, and there is some debutante quinceañeras down below, and the butterfly was cast in resin. And anyway, lots of elements. We use a lot of elements in our work.
This is probably the largest glass figure that we have done. We did it at the Tacoma Museum of Art residency there to produce work with fantastic gaffers, which are the blowers there. And the body features a fancy technique in glass, which is called Rabbit Cello, which involves blowing a bubble into a bubble.
So one bubble has the cane going one way, the little red lines, and the other bubble has the cane going the other way, and then they fuse together, and you have a crisscross pattern. Usually you also have a little bubble in between the two, so every little window between. To give you an idea, this one is definitely the biggest piece. That's a car rim that it's mounted on. So there's definitely a Sasquatch as well. And again, that's the drawing that we would do there in the shop as we are thinking, what are we making next? We come up with these drawings.
But that drawing process is extended to the Rabbit Cello technique too, because you're literally drawing with the cane and crisscrossing the cane, correct?
Right, and in this case, since we were in the Tacoma Museum of Glass, one of our gaffers, which is the master glass blowers, was a specialist in this technique. So we thought, well, we should definitely do a piece that's got that's particular speciality. I keep disappearing on the camera. I don't know why. It doesn't like me. Anyway, and the piece on the left here is a piece that has the mixed media of the blown glass sculpt on the top, but also underneath the ceramic we made in residence at Pottery Northwest in Seattle. This terracotta base at the bottom, it's Mictlantecutli is the name of that piece.
The piece on the right, the astronaut is holding these binoculars that are actually Avon bottles.
And it's got a whole scene about yeah, we did a presentation for the Museum of Glass in Millville, New Jersey, where we made some work as residents quite a few years ago. And then when we were making the presentation, they told us that they probably have the molds to all of these bottles there, which is amazing. They have kept all of those bottles, and then the only problem with the Avon bottles is you have to be careful not to open them, because the cologne that's in there is just incredibly
still is radioactive.
Oh my God, it's too strong, too strong. Here's another example of a drawing and then the actual piece. We made this piece in RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. We made it with the students there as invited artists. So the piece is called Tanque You, which is kind of like saying thank you, but it's making a tank out of you. And so it's sort of a Mexican wrestler having a gun in his mouth and being, because of the Mexican wrestling is such theatrics that we wanted to talk about that as a sort of men in tights waltzing together.
When you do the drawings, are you both drawings and then kind of looking and exchanging ideas and say, hey, let's add, let's take this further and turn it into a sculptural form?
Our drawings are our game plan. And when you're in the hot shop producing a blown glass, you don't have a lot of time to think over what the steps of constructing something. And if we're not in the same page about how to construct something, we get into trouble. That's why drawing is essential. But of course, it's a record of an idea that we don't always produce all the drawings that we make in a particular residency.
Yeah.
So in fact, we get asked a lot if we fight, and how do we get along as collaborators? Because a lot of artists really are, most artists are alone and view their struggle in their kind of as a lonely, struggle to figure out how to do something wonderful. I think that if we don't talk about something when we're blowing glass and all the equipment is on, that's when we get into trouble. So we try to abide by that. Because otherwise it's like, oh, I thought we were doing this. And that's when the friction happens. It's not so much that we're fighting, but that we're assuming things that we haven't talked about. Here's a couple of figures. The figure on the left is a wrestler. The knife that's in his hand with a little smiley face, it's really a copy of a obsidian knife that the Aztecs used for sacrifice. So we always thought it was funny how the Aztecs do this sort of grisly sacrifice, and yet some of their imagery can be kind of jovial and even somewhat like a kid's story, like the little knifey here is going to extricate this little heart. And the one on the right is a devil, because the devil in Mexico is, it's even in the nativity scene, it's seen as sort of an alter ego to the goodness of the nativity scene. There's a little devil in the background reminding us that there's always the devil in the back. So it's almost seen as a sort of not benevolent so much as, well, we all got two sides and we can both do naughty things. And it's a little lighthearted in that sense.
I think in Catholic tradition, the devil is somebody that's always with you, being kind of playfully evil. And then thinking
our conscience, yeah.
Like our conscience, yeah. I think in the Protestant tradition, it's black and white. It's just bad, but it's not always bad. There's a playfulness going on there that we enjoy working with. This image is of a piece that we did last summer. It's a rather large sculpture for blown glass. It's titled 2020. It's sort of like when they used to have the babies come in as the new year, pushing out the old man being the old year. Well, this is 2020, and since 2020 came in with such a force of strangeness and negativity, we had to make a very weird baby.
Yeah, it's kind of like an Aztec emperor being born with a remote control in his hand. So again, it's a blown glass head. The baby figure itself is probably a prop for selling infant drugs in a drugstore. And we just took the head off and put our own. So and then the bed is another piece we found, sort of an antique doll bed maybe. We made our own mattress with roses, so it's a bed of roses. And then down below those dishes, probably candy dish or something to that nature, or maybe a salt dish. We put little insects inside of the resin there, so it looks like it's a barrier for the baby to be attacked, so that it doesn't get insects on the bed. So these are just some of the stuff that we're managing. Those are also polished glass diamonds on the bedposts.
They almost have a very Tiffany influence or appearance to them. Louis Comfort Tiffany.
Yeah, there's a little nouveau-ish thing happening up on the bedposts.
Here we're working in the Pilchuck Glass School just north of Seattle. We have taught there 4 times now, and we like teaching a lot in Penland School of Glass, School of Crafts. We do the summer workshops.
So we'll be teaching in Penland this summer in North Carolina in the Smoky Mountains in session 3. And we teach blown glass with mixed media. So when we work with students with glass, we also show them how to put together an assemblage with using different various adhesives and other mixed media materials. Here we're just working on a glass piece with little glass flowers on them.
The one in the left is titled The Curator's Eye, and I think we artists need to hold the curator's eye somewhat like that.
And the piece on the right is a series of work that we've done with sort of these animal deities. They're kind of like an animal spirit, or tonali in the Nahua tradition. In this case, the piece is called The Recurring Dream, and it is a pull toy, but the chain is invested inside of the resin base at the bottom. And like dreams have that sort of mixture of, there's the mobility of the pull toy, but there's frozen into the base. And we love the way that dreams have that duality of that doesn't make sense. That sometimes you're like, well, we're moving and yet we're not moving, or things are changing or they're not. And we just wanted to go back to some of the things that stick to into our dreams for our lifetime.
Two more animal spirits. The one on the left is a little bit of an homage to Prince.
Prince.
We were in a residency in River Falls when we decided to make this, when he died.
Yeah, we flew into Minneapolis and he had just recently died, and we made a couple pieces very much referential to Prince because the whole city was in mourning. I mean, it was purple fog descended upon Minneapolis. And the one on the right is also another sort of animal deity, sort of a Pulp Fiction rabbit.
When we did a whole series of residencies in Europe, and while in Europe we started this series of drunk bottles. Having grown up with a father with a drinking problem, it became so full of such an important part of our life, and maybe perhaps that's why we were class. It's a rather large bottle, again 2.5 feet, maybe almost 3 feet.
And that's a resin base on the bottom. The piece on the right is from the animal spirit. It's a little scorpion that we decided to turn into kind of an insect. The insect pin going through it as if that was being displayed at like a Natural History Museum. And she's a Scorpio, but she's got her ballet slippers, so there's a dainty quality, even though she may sting you yet. So it's like she's a Scorpio.
These two pieces represent a series that we've been working for years that we call sketches. They're mixed media sketches done in a lighter mode than most of our other work. We enjoy making this very much, and it also it's important to us to access a collector market that that's not loaded with money, but still wants a piece, right? So it's
sorry for the masses.
Yeah.
So they're fun pieces. That got the one on the right, the porky pig face is a cast resin with dice inside of it. So we made that, but there's a little tiny washer board from Mexico that really still being sold, washer boards, you know, like by hand, so you can wring something out. Those little shoes are Delft ceramics from Holland. The one on the left has a mortar and pestle that's called a molcajete that you would make salsa in Mexico, the handmade salsa.
This is part of a series of pieces that we have worked over the years, circular, we call them mandala pieces. And they're loosely inspired by the Aztec calendar. The Aztec calendar image is ubiquitous in all over Mexico, in the coins. Even the national soccer team would wear the Aztec calendar as an emblem. So it's one of those modern nationalistic emblems that is imprinted in everybody in Mexico. You all probably have seen it in Mexican restaurants.
So this is the sunstone or the Aztec calendar. And of course, this is the piece that's in the collection of the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts that's now on view in Crystal Bridges. You can see the references of how some of the imagery from here, those sort of, we call them the pie wedges, and there's in the middle, there's a face with the 4 pieces around it. You can see some of them are reverberated into our work. But in this one, with a blown glass face in the middle, has a sort of like nasty look, and he's kind of saying, you know, what are you looking at? And I think it's the self-consciousness of like the way that the Aztec calendar has an end of a kind of predestined end to the Aztecs. So the piece in the middle with the 4 sections it's called the Ojin, has the 4 previous epochs, and then the middle is the last epoch for them, the fifth sun. So he's almost conscious of having the demise of the Aztec Empire, which of course was the Spanish conquest with Cortés. So there's references here also to European culture, going out from the pie wedges to the sort of ballet scenes, bringing on the sort of classicism from Europe. There's a mixture here happening, which is of course what the vast majority of Mexico is, which is the mestizaje or mixture of Spanish and indigenous blood. Here's a little detail of some of the resin cast pieces. And on the ojin, the faces at the top are actually stamped brass pieces that are in the kind of from Inca origin, which of course is not anywhere near Mexico. And we've added those on purpose because people say Mayan calendar when they mean Aztec calendar, or there's a sort of an interchangeability when it comes to people's knowledge of the pre-Columbian, because pre-Columbian, of course, is not just Maya and it's not just Aztec, it is Inca, and it is all myriad of First Nations people all over the Americas. And of course, that's a broader conversation.
Can you put the Aztec calendar again? So when we were kids, our parents used to have this big coffee table in the living room that was a casting of an Aztec calendar. And we used to play matchbox with matchbox cars along surrounding the calendar. So it became kind of our little imprinted city
Racetracks
in modern 1960s terms.
And by the way, above the couch was a probably late 1800s painting of the Virgen de Guadalupe. So we had like these two ubiquitous symbols of Mexicanity: the Virgen de Guadalupe, a very old painting, and the Aztec calendar.
You cannot get more cliche than that.
They are the biggest cliches, absolutely. We did grow up with them. I mean, it sounds so almost trite, but it is what it is. And here's another detail of the piece from below. You can see the glass piece, sort of the tongue protruding out there at the top, and you can get a little bit of an idea of how it's constructed on aluminum panels. So that's cut out aluminum that you see underneath the golden faces, and the very backdrop is also aluminum substrate.
Yeah, and there's also that glitter embedded in the resin, so it has this richness of depth and luminosity when the light strikes it.
That changes quite a bit depending on the light.
Yeah.
Here's another example of one of our calendar pieces. This was called Mitosis. After we made it, we realized that those little dark pieces look like the separating of the
DNA.
Yeah. So
cells. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what we meant by mitosis is by splitting of the cells is also the splitting, trying to split up what is pre-Columbian and what is sort of classical European. Like we're a mixture of both, but can you split it back up? It's too late. It's already together.
Another version, this was titled Eastern Medicine, a little bit larger than the other ones. It's about 6 feet wide.
And it has images from Japanese foods, some udon places that we visited when we were teaching in Japan. So we wanted to talk about food as medicine, and of course the link to the ancient cultures and so on. And of course the perimeter has the Virgen de Guadalupe, but we dressed her in kibuki, which of course adds another layer because that is men playing a woman's role. So all kinds of levels going on here. So now this is us in our studio looking at a piece that has a lenticular background and a blown glass piece in front. You can see us in the studio, and the piece on the right, I'm going to play a quick video to show you how that lenticular moves, and I will explain what lenticular is. As you move, you will see two images, then one and then the other. So lenticular is something that was around. The lenticular is something that was around when we were kids. They used to call them winkies, I think, in the U.S. What it is, to be clear, is here's another lenticular. It's two images that are cut into fine lines. You subtract half of the image, and then you embed the other half in there. And there's a really thin plastic lens with lines. It acts as a parallax blocker, which means that as you move, you'll see one image or the other. They call them winkies because you would see maybe somebody winking at you or something very simple, very analog and very, very rustic. Well, now you can do things that are a little more involved. So this piece is called Miss Mido. We made because we were part of a show that combined the artists with scientists from the world famous Salk Institute in La Jolla, California. We were combined with Dr. Shadell, that's a specialist in mitochondrial DNA and what it does. And we learned from him that the mitochondria, as we all learned, and I hope you remember this from your biology class, we learned that the mitochondria is the sort of the fuel cell of energy that is in all animal and plant life. And the issue with it is that apparently it also, once we start aging, the cell walls break down, and when the mitochondria is released, it could have a lot to do with our aging process. So here is the lenticular piece framed by gold in the middle, and all around is a water jet cut frame. Here's the water jet parts, and then it casts this wonderful shadow onto the wall. This also has a coating of resin with a little bit of a metal flake in it.
So a lenticular print is only about 1/4 of an inch thick, and it gives you this perceived depth of over a foot and all this layering. And that is the reason that we have gravitated to lenticular, because we have always been mixed media artists primarily. And in lenticular art, we can layer in a single sheet of plastic this effect of having a collage of many characters in space.
And so this one is 2 images. These are two images that we have sent to print, and then they cut them in little lines, and then they combine them. So as you move, these are the 2 things that you would see. It is the young mitochondria as a sort of debutante, and she's great. And then our cells are happy and young and plump and full of life. And as we get old, the mitochondria get released from our weakened cell walls and slowly decay.
This effect is called flip. So you have to move laterally from side to side in front of the piece, and the piece totally changes on you.
So I'm going to show that in the image on the left is a very large piece, about 7 feet tall and 5 feet wide, called Feminencia or Feminence. And the piece on the left, you can see is gold framed, is the lenticular. The reason it looks a little blurry is because cameras are monocular, and we have stereo vision, of course. And so in person, you see a lot more detail. The piece on the right, if you would look on the right, I'm going to play the video. You will see how it shifts from one image to the other as you walk by. That's experientially what happens when you walk by. It has to be a video, otherwise you wouldn't see it. There's a tremendous amount of depth that happens as you're walking by in these. The perceived depth is over 20 inches. And here are the 2 images, the A and the B, that we send out. On that image you just saw, on the left is A and on the right is B. The only thing they have in common is the eyes. So as you move, all of the other things shift. The piece on the left is Kali, which is a deity from the Buddhists, a female deity. It's a sculpture that got installed in Ensenada by some Buddhist monks in the 90s. Big 2-story piece that got kind of defaced and graffitied. We love her because she has so much dignity, even defaced. And of course, Brian, you picked up on it. It's the underneath side of the Eiffel Tower at night. That's why it's the golden structure that you see. The figures flanking on the sides are from the building in Ljubljana in Slovenia. The chandeliers, I think, from the Louvre. Anyway, we take a lot of pictures when we travel, and they're a big part of it.
How do you keep track? Sorry for interrupting. How do you keep track of all that imagery and determine how you might want to incorporate it in a work?
That's a good question. Filing photographs is always problematic because if you do it by trip or by subject matter, but sometimes we just remember that there's something that really struck a note. Kind of like when we collect objects, there's things that really strike us for certain needs or certain reasons, and photographs do the same. So all of these photos were taken by us as we travel. And on the right, the images of a sculpture of Leopold from Belgium. that we wanted him to be very nervous. He looks nervous with all of these females around him. And of course, we called it feminencia or feminines because we wanted it to be about the surging power of women in the world and how much we kind of need that to counterbalance all of the sort of dominant, male-dominant world that we have lived in. So he's just looking very nervous as a leader, surrounded by all of this. And then the images are from paintings, but the background is La Piscine, which is a wonderful museum just north of Lille in France.
This is an installation that starts our installation art segment. Another version of our Aztec calendar mandalas. It's a good 11 feet high inside installation that originally started participation in the biennial in Mercosur in Brazil, in Porto Alegre. Basically, the idea is that the Aztec calendar shows the future, the fifth sun, the so-called fifth sun. And we decided to make a whole Aztec calendar out of very cheap items bought at dollar stores, both in the mission districts in San Francisco and Brazil. And the thesis of the piece is that our cultural perceptions are being altered by the reinterpretation of all these cultural items in China.
So who's interpreting your culture in terms of the material culture, or what anthropologists refer to as material culture, are the things that represent us, that we consume. So for instance, the little Virgin of Guadalupe that are shooting away from the circle in the middle are all done kind of painted wrong, but we still consume them because they're cheap. And we're not doing a judgment call. I think art is about pointing things out, not necessarily about saying something's better than something else. The Aztec calendar middle, by the way, also had a spoken word piece by a poet friend of ours with a resin on top of it. So there's a duality of the image of the resin and his face behind talking. Anyway, we're going to go a little bit quicker because we'll run out of time. So here's a couple more large installations. These are 9 feet tall with videos. Those videos are from the 99-2000 period. So they are actually videos with a video cassette. Remember those.
So it's a north and south piece. The one on the right done with things we obtain in Kansas City, and the left south of the border.
Here's a large installation called Colonial Atmosphere. It's the Olmec head as a sort of lunar lander. The figure of Coatlico, which is the mother goddess of all the Aztecs, is actually life-size, more or less 5.5 feet tall. And you walk around it. We wanted to talk about the lunar surface with these tires. So the tires are kind of reminiscent of maybe the craters from impacts on the moon. This piece is complex enough to talk for quite a while. And again, we're going to move on.
Another version, in this case, is married to a travel trailer, resin cast face with human hair, and a spoken word piece on the eyeballs by a good friend of ours, Quincy Troop.
And this is our first lenticular. It was 2009, a museum in San Jose, California, called Macla. We ran into Lenticular and we decided to run with it. In this case, it's a collaboration with Hans Memling, Last Judgment. We love collaborating with the old masters. They never say no.
They never say no.
So this is the Lenticular. Well, you know, with issues of appropriation. So the walls have a photographic collage that is printed and self-adhesive, and then this altar we fabricated for this exhibition.
It's an exhibition we had in Belgium, in Lommel. In the Glass Museum, they had like this tall cone-shaped tower, and we did this installation with a few hundred of these butterflies, which are lenticular.
So look at the eyes, and you will see the movement. They basically open and close their eyes. So they are winkies, literally. They're crucifixes with monarch butterfly wings, and there's 300 of them. And you can see the top of the tower there. That's the landing. There's a double spiral helix going up in stairways. And then here is the bottom of the tower, like about 5 stories tall, and the beginning of the stairway, where with our exhibition in this museum in Lommel in Belgium in 2013. The piece in front is part of their collection as well.
Later part of this exhibition went to near Newcastle, England, to the museum there.
So in the National Glass Center in the UK, in Sutherland. So here we did a wall print with that has some glass pieces on it. If you look closely, there's also some 3-dimensional pieces. And so our exhibitions kept growing because we made work and by this point we had made work in Norway, in Bergen. We made work in Lommel. We made some work here in the UK. And we also had done some work in residency in Portugal. In Portugal, in Windgate in Portugal. Here's another image from that exhibition. That wall print is the actual wall between the United States and Mexico going into the Pacific Ocean. So in the background, you can kind of see San Diego lit up in the sky, and where the picture is being taken from the beaches of Tijuana. And the whole landscape is dotted with the Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch. And again, another one of the masters that we collaborate with, is always willing.
He said, yeah. The border, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. So in Sutherland, here's the piece that we made for, was commissioned by the city of Toulouse in France for an art and music festival they do every couple years. This piece is kinetic. It actually spins. It's the Aztec calendar. Again, going back to the original Jamex piece. And here you can see that we use the butterfly crucifixes throughout the museums, flying in a swarm, going from our exhibition, our part of the exhibition, and down into the foyer.
Did people interact with that, or did it move on its own?
No, you had to actually, this one you have to move on. We have one of these wheels that has a motorized, that I didn't show in this presentation. This one you have to kind of spin on your own, which made it feel a little bit like a carnival or a festival of some sort, like a roulette. So that's the exhibition from the National Glass Center in England, then went on to the National Glass Museum in the Netherlands. And this wallpaper artwork has us as part of the players. Our faces are interposed. It's my brother on the couch there, and it's me as a girl with a little rabbit speaking into my ear, and the curator is in a table down further down. So basically, we are putting ourselves into this sort of remade classics from the Flemish classics, with the Aztec piece in the middle from what's his name? Helguera, yeah. And there we also used the wallpaper on the ground, so we had a chance to do an installation. We love doing installation works. I honestly think that's where we feel the freest, when we actually can use our work and make it as an environment. There, on the floor, we put this adhesive wallpaper, and people stepped on it for a 3 months show, and it lasted quite well. We also made more work there in Holland. And the piece on the right is another wallpaper piece. Again, you can see our faces superimposed. We're all over it, my brother and me. And there's a blown glass heart in the middle, sort of a brave heart, we call them, and a little jar at the bottom.
In the image on the left, are you coming downstairs as you're approaching that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're literally going into what looks like an abyss.
Pretty much just stepping down into hell.
Yeah. But that's just a classic hell, which has got its bright spot.
It's got its fun parts, yeah.
And so the exhibition then went to Denmark. And for us, it was special to go to Denmark. Our maternal grandfather was from Denmark. So we always wondered what we were, how Danish we were. And when we visited Denmark, we enjoyed it tremendously, but we realized we're not so much the Danish aesthetic. We're very much not minimalists. I think not having the long winters, maybe it makes a difference, because the tropical land is a lot more Baroque, starting from the jungle itself. So here, the museum in Ebeltoft, what happened was that Aarhus was the European cultural capital for 2017. And they invited us they wanted to invite us to make an exhibition, but with the money from the EU, the 7 regional museums decided to do the 7 deadly sins, and they picked out of a hat sloth. So we had to do an exhibition based on sloth, which did not lose. We found very, very funny.
And we said, yeah, right. You pick up the 2 Mexican artists and you want us to talk about sloth. And it turns out we did have a lot to say about sloth. On the left side, you can see our thesis for the exhibition was that maybe sloth will be the savior of this new age that comes with robotics and artificial intelligence, and it's an opportunity to get back to the liberal arts that we have neglected. So on the left side, you see the lazy Mexican ascending like Nintendo style, cloud to cloud.
And we also made some new lenticulars. The piece on the right is a new lenticular that we made, very large, like 4 by 6 feet for a lenticular. That's quite large. Here's another one on the wall down below. We're looking for the 2nd story. It's a big installation. The pieces that you see there a lot of them are made in different museums as we've gone through. This is sort of a touring show in Europe. And then, so I'm going to show you that lenticular that's on the right. That's a wallpaper installation. You see the image on the left, and the lenticular is framed by gold. And on the right, we'll show you what that lenticular looks like. When we get it from the printers, they send us a proof that shows the movement as you walk by. And that's the way the movement happens when you walk in front of the piece. This is the only way to show you, because again, it doesn't photograph well, but that shows you what happens as you move laterally in front of this artwork.
That installation was about a good 25, 30 feet tall in its entirety, correct?
Right.
About 20, yeah.
20.
It's the wonderful thing about the wallpaper. It just is a very inexpensive way to completely affect an environment.
But then we definitely want to mess with three-dimensionality, and the lenticular does that. And of course, we do that with our own pieces. This piece, if you see on the flower egg in the middle that's above the lenticular, there's a blown glass head there that has flowers all over it. So we like the fact that it's jumping out at you and you have a trouble adjusting as to where two-dimensionality begins and ends and three-dimensionality takes over. And so later in 2017, we were also did a show. We're part of a show in Netherlands again, in the Kunstfort, an art fort in Asperen near Leerdam, where we were blowing glass at the Royal Crystal Factory. So those bottles are quite large, 24 inches tall bottles made out of lead crystal. So we had never worked with lead crystal.
The idea of the show is to pair up designers and artists. I mean, makers, blown glass experts and designers to produce a show. But in our case, we're both. So we went both plus both, the designers and the actual makers.
So we got 2 rooms in the fort. This is one of them. And the other one, we decided to do an opulent table, sort of a, the table after a rich feast that just happened. And this is a fort that now is not used as a fort. It's they have bats there in most of the year, and in the summer they convert it into an art museum.
And then the exhibition went to Franau in Germany, in Bavaria.
And here's a wallpaper installation, again, using some old Flemish images and contemporary images in Mexico. There's a glass piece on the upper left that is on the wall. So it's very mixed imagery having to do with the European and indigenous mix. This is another wallpaper installation we did in Bavaria, the same museum.
And 2 years ago, we were invited to be part of this art festival in Lille, France. Called, the title was El Dorado, like the mythological place in South America that's supposed to be so perfect. And we made a whole installation dedicated to El Dorado.
So again, it's another feast. That same feast got transported. It's all the images from the last show. And we made a larger table that's sort of like a party that happened there the day before, with a lot of imageries on the walls, including that imagery from the border pieces there. Again, a new version. We have the San Diego in the background. We have little babies swimming in the ocean, jumping from the US to Mexico. I mean, from Mexico to the US, lots of different things happening. Our work has so many layers that sometimes it's hard to compress it. And the rest of the show had some of those bottles that were in the aspetum in cases. We love the way that putting a big plastic box on the glass makes it look like it's, you know, fancy. Making things precious. So our exhibition, this was 2018, and 2019, the exhibition made a new version of it in Breslau, in Poland. So you can recognize some of the pieces as they're traveling, and we make more work as we go. And in Poland, we did a work about based on the wallpaper piece in the background is based on the tradition of the Florianoi, which is
the creature in the middle is Slavic mythology of this creature that lives in ponds and lakes. And he sometimes takes people and drowns them, sometimes he saves them. He basically is an old guy with the head of a frog.
Very pagan.
And to us, he was a fitting symbol of the creatures in the forest that are telling us and reprimanding us for excess, just like the Lorax or maybe
Greta Lundberg,
yeah.
Yeah, the Lorax. But basically, we also wanted to talk about the northern Crusades. When the Crusades failed in the south, this is true history that some of them went north and basically pushed the pagans that lived in the woods into villages and therefore Christianizing them. And there was wars. There was actual wars that happened up there over that. And we're romantically trying to say that we need to neo-paganize.
What are in the little talk bubbles that, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that before, but there are little talk bubbles emerging from the people's mouths or some of the.
Yeah. Those are actual iron-on patches that we found that we stuck onto the pieces. Like this, like it's all those paintings in the background are historical paintings from Polish history. So we wanted Poles to recognize their history sort of swirling into the middle, going back to this paganism in the middle. But all of those paintings, like most classical historical paintings, are about wars and all of this turmoil and tumult. And of course, here we have the writer, the king, saying "oops" at the bottom right, kind of like, well, war sometimes is kind of like oops, like we killed the wrong guy kind of thing. So the rest of the show here, we made a couple of new lenticulars. That piece in the middle is a lenticular we made in Poland. There's a couple of them in this exhibition, and it was called the Florentine Syndrome. Or otherwise known as the Stendhal syndrome. Stendhal was a French philosopher that went to Florence, was so overwhelmed by the beauty of all the artwork everywhere that he fainted. And it is a beautiful term, the Florentine syndrome, because it is basically being overwhelmed by either beauty or art that you could faint. And we are in these installations, we're very much trying to do that to people, have them faint, maybe because they like it or maybe because they don't. So there is that some of the wallpaper from our exhibition in Lille got recycled here. We have pieces that were made here on the left pedestal is Lisbon, the middle one is Leerdam, and the one on the right is Bergen. So this show keeps getting bigger from different museums we go to. In the rooms down below, we made that feast again that we made and we made it in a dark room, so it really shone as just the feast in the middle.
So in installation art, we have complete freedom. We don't consider commerciality or anything. And in the third one of our trifecta, public art, is the complete opposite, because the considerations that you have are so many committees and engineering and just practical problems.
So this is like a 16-foot tall robot, sort of a happy robot. It's steel. The orange parts or pink parts are hand-carved cantera stone. This is in San Diego. This is in a hospital. We have several pieces in a hospital in Los Angeles, in Downey. This is a 10-foot mandala done with lenticular, and there's customers from the hospital there. It's a rehabilitation.
It looks like he wants to burst out, but it's actually a flat piece.
Yeah, it does look like a cornea of an eye.
Yeah, originally that's the basis, and then all this layers on top. So this is a 20-foot lenticular in the hospital. To give you an idea, I'm going to start the video on the left. You can see somebody walking by, and there you see the image, how it moves as you walk sideways. Again, it's a parallax blocker. You see one image and the other. And the image on the right is with the proof that they sent of all those panels. So that's the equivalent of 5 sheets of plywood, because it's 8 feet wide and 20 tall.
Wow.
So all of those need to match. It's a tremendous amount of work to do this.
In the same hospital, we did a monumental sculpture, over 20 feet high, made out of carved stone over a stainless steel armature, and basically symbolizing the work that they do on the spinal recovery in that hospital. So it's a tree of life with the human spine in the middle. You can see the tendrils coming up from the spine of the nerves.
Those are ceramic flowers, and the hand-carved stone is the cantera stone, is what most of colonial Mexico is made of. And there you can see the campus of that hospital, Rancho Los Amigos National Rehabilitation Center, where they deal with a lot with spinal trauma and also stroke and other things of that nature. This is a project we did for a library. That's City San Isidro. That's right next to Tijuana. This is literally the border. The first time we'd ever done water jet cut steel here. It's done in a papel picado, with the banners that you see that unfold. It's all cut paper done with a chisel. Very Mexican tradition for parties in central and southern Mexico. Here's another one that we did a couple. These are 14 by 14 feet. The other one is 14 by 22.
And another piece that we made for the same library, kind of a portal arch with a lenticular columns and a hand-carved stone top.
So each one of those lenticular columns, there's a bottom and a top, and each one of those changes from this colorful image to some Piranesi type prints. So here we are. I'll show you the bottom right. The right one is the bottom of a column, and that's the depth that you would see. And then as you move, it would switch to that one, which is the next one over from the right. And then the top of the same column starts on the left, and that's the movement. And then as you move, you will see the Piranesi type of engravings. So this is just one side of one column, and there's images on all 4 sides.
And this is an image of a polycarbonate piece that we're about to finish next month in Compton, Watts, LA. There are these sets of 6 parasols with water jet cut images.
Quite large.
It's the Rosa Parks station, so we use the symbols of
Rosa Parks and the Black Power, and also we also use the Black Panthers image in another one of the parasols.
Oh, with the raised fist. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that fist is. And those holes that you see will have these polished glass diamonds in them that will reflect light because they're installed outside. In daylight, the image will project onto the ground, and these diamonds will refract the light.
This image gives you a good idea of the size.
Yeah, they're quite large. They're 2 16 by 16 wide and 16 tall, and 14, sorry. And there's 4 of them that are 12 wide and 12 tall. And this is sort of a rendition. That's the 105 freeway in LA, and it's basically it's a junction between 2 of the metro lines in LA. And lastly, this is the rocket you see on the right is a project we're working on for the city of Sacramento right now. It's going to be like a 30-foot rocket taking off. And this is our some future shows that we have coming up. We will be the first ever show for the Smithsonian Latino Center at the Chichmerin Museum. That will be a traveling exhibition. The European tour that we have is going to go Museo de Vidro in Marina Grande in Portugal, October of next year. And lots of other things going on. But anyway, I think that's we can maybe go back. I'm going to stop sharing screen, and we can, let me see if I can figure that out. I just saw that button.
And we finished exactly on time. So thank you too.
Okay.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your upcoming exhibition for the Smithsonian? Is there anything you can share with that? Is it a retrospective or?
Am I still screen sharing?
Yes, we can see the last of your slide. Yeah. There we go.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
I saw where. Okay. Yeah, so we got invited by the Smithsonian Latino Center to be their inaugural show, but they still don't. There's no like building yet for them, because up to now they have been an advisory organ inside of the Smithsonian, meaning that when they do exhibitions that include Latin American artists from the United States, they're the ones that arrange it and can talk about it. But then they wanted to break out and start exhibiting, so they chose us for their first show. And Cheech, who's been a collector of our work for many, many years, said, no, you have to open it in my center, which happens to be opening at the right time. So it should be open either, I think it might not be October of this year, if not very early next year. And it's going to be a traveling exhibition, kind of a retrospective. We like to call it a retro perspective.
Retro perspective.
Change it. Yeah, it's almost like the rear view mirror in the car, right? That's what you just drove by. So it will have a lot of our work, trying to be comprehensive. Full catalog, curated by Selena Preciado, curator from Tijuana, that's now working with the Getty. So we're very excited about it and trying to make everything, everything ready and for the catalog and for the exhibition.
Good. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that, and continued good luck on that project. And we don't have any time for questions, but it's been wonderful talking with you both. So thank you again for your time. And hopefully we can see you at the new Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts when we open in 2022. And look forward to prospect of a future collaboration with you both. So always open to that.
We love visiting. When we were there 5 years ago, is it now? We would love
2020, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we hope to, and we're very excited to see the new building. And congratulations again on that, and well deserved, and it's going to be a great place for Arkansas and for everybody to come visit.
We're looking forward to it.
Thank you for having us, and thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you.